looking everywhere, that's how the story goes. Grab your key.
The Zombie Story Zone presents Echoes of the Risen, a tale where passion meets peril, and love awakens the dead. In the mist-shrouded village of Eldridge Hollow, beauty and sin dance side by side. Beneath its cobbled streets lies a secret older than any prayer, a forbidden chalice forged by lust, ambition, and blood. When the sun falls and the moons rise, no heart is safe, no desire pure. From forbidden love stories under candlelight to nightmares rising from the crypt, every heartbeat, every kiss, every betrayal feeds the curse. As the villagers fight for survival, they discover that the greatest horror isn't death, it's the price of passion itself. Prepare for 16 breathtaking chapters filled with romance, suspense, betrayal, and undead terror, where every glance could be a farewell and every embrace might be your last. Stay till the end, because each chapter unravels a new secret, and the final twist will change everything you thought you knew about love and the living dead. Subscribe now to the Zombie Story Zone. Hit that bell icon and join the undead journey, where love never dies. It just hungers. Chapter 1. Whispers of the Harvest Moon. Under the silver enchantment of the harvest moon, Eldridge Hollow dreamed in the arms of autumn. The year was 1567, when England's countryside was still stitched together by superstition and song. The village lay nestled in a cradle of rolling emerald hills, its thatched roofs veiled in ivy, and its cobblestone lanes glittering with dew. Lanterns swung from gnarled oaks, spilling golden halos across faces, flushed with cider and joy. The air was a perfume of spiced apples, roasted chestnuts, and slow-burning firewood, wrapping the night in an embrace both innocent and sinful. At the heart of the merriment, Eliza danced like flame incarnate. Her auburn curls shimmered in the firelight, tumbling in untamed waves over a bodice of soft crimson velvet, laced just loose enough to hint at the treasures beneath. Her skirt, earthy red wool trimmed with golden thread, spun high as she twirled, revealing glimpses of silk stockings clinging to legs that stirred the fantasies of every watching lad. "Come now, Thomas," she called, laughter curling around her words like honey. "Are you afraid I'll outspin you again?" Thomas, the blacksmith's son, stood tall and broad, his tunic undone at the throat, the muscles of his forearms gleaming with the honest sheen of labor. His hammer-calloused hands longed to rest on Eliza's waist, to pull her into his orbit. He grinned through the soot and sweat, his heart pounding like a forge's rhythm, a man already melting in her heat. Beyond the circle of flame and cheer, Mira lingered in half-shadow. Her raven-black hair, woven with wildflowers, fell over a kirtle of forest green that hugged the soft poetry of her figure. Her beauty was the kind that whispered rather than shouted. Gentle, haunting, unforgettable. William, the farmer's boy, watched her from across the square, the flicker of the bonfire reflected in his earnest eyes. Gathering courage, he stepped forward. "Mira," he said softly, "may I have this dance?" She looked up, blushing as her fingers brushed his sleeve. The touch lingered like a secret, the birth of something tender beneath the watchful moon. Lila, wild and golden, spun through the night with laughter spilling from her lips. Her braids of sunlight and bodice of sky-blue linen caught every flicker of firelight as she twirled. The neckline dipped daringly with each leap, her youth and freedom intoxicating to all who looked on. Edmund, the baker's freckled apprentice, stumbled toward her, flour still clinging to his shirt. "You're a whirlwind, Lila," he breathed as he caught her waist mid-spin. Their laughter tangled, their closeness almost scandalous, the air between them trembling with a promise sweeter than any pastry he'd ever baked. At the edge of the revelry sat Sophia, her delicate hands tracing the pages of a forbidden tome, its cover worn by centuries of whispers. Her gown, though modest, clung to her with a quiet sensuality, ivory linen sculpted by moonlight. Her beauty was not the loud kind, but the kind that made men forget to breathe. Henry, the young priest's apprentice, approached hesitantly, his faith faltering in the face of her calm allure. "What secrets do those pages hold?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. She looked up, her lips curving in a knowing smile. "Secrets, Henry, perhaps of the soul, perhaps of sin." His throat tightened, for he knew not which he feared more. Tessa, The village herbalist drifted among them like a midsummer spirit. Her basket brimmed with blooms of lavender and wolfsbane, the scent trailing behind her like enchantment. Her smock, cinched neatly at the waist, revealed a body more graceful than modesty could conceal. She caught Henry's gaze, smiled with a hint of mischief, and moved on, her perfume lingering, her presence a spell cast in passing. As laughter swelled and the fiddles sang their joyous lament, a sound crept through the revelry, a low, distant howl, long and hollow. The villagers paused, glancing to the dark ridge where the oaks stood sentinel. "A wolf," someone whispered. But deep in the hollow where shadows gathered thick and old, something else listened, ancient, hungry, and waiting for the moon to reach its highest throne. The night resumed its dance, but in the hush between the drum beats, the earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Thatch. When the morning came, it did not bring peace. It brought whispers. Whispers that slithered beneath rooftops, hiding in the straw and smoke. And though the sun rose golden over Eldridge Hollow, the shadows beneath the thatch had already begun to move. Dawn unfurled across Eldridge Hollow like a lover's caress, soft, warm, and deceptively gentle. The village shimmered beneath hues of rose and gold, its cottages glistening with dew, its meadows steeped in morning hush. But beneath the tranquil surface, last night's laughter lingered like perfume, sweet and intoxicating, masking something unseen, something wrong. Eliza stirred first, her body humming with the memory of the dance. She slipped from her straw bed and into a linen camise that clung to her damp skin, translucent in the sunlight that filtered through her cottage window. Outside, the village well steamed faintly in the cool dawn. She drew water, droplets tracing paths down her wrist, glinting like silver tears. Thomas appeared, his shirt unlaced, his breath thick with sleepless yearning. "Sleep evaded me, Eliza," he murmured, voice rough as stone yet tender as confession. "Your dance haunts my forge." She turned, eyes glimmering like embers. Water dripped from her fingers onto his chest, spreading in a dark stain over the linen. "Then forge something for me, blacksmith," she whispered, leaning close. Something hot. His breath caught, the promise of fire in her words and a storm in his heart. Across the misty meadow, Mira gathered herbs in the hush of early light. Dew jeweled the hem of her green kirtle, and her dark hair tumbled loose over her shoulders. William followed at a respectful distance, basket in hand as though drawn by gravity itself. "The stars spoke of change last night," she murmured, fingers brushing his as they knelt together. "Change," he echoed, capturing her hand. "Then let me be your constant, Mira." Their eyes met, soft and trembling, two souls standing on the edge of something forbidden yet fated. Lila worked the morning ovens with Edmund, the scent of warm dough filling the air like an embrace. Flour dusted her cheekbones, turning her into a sunlit nymph amid heat and laughter. When she bent to retrieve a loaf, her skirts shifted just enough to make Edmund's pulse stutter. "Careful, love," he said with a grin, stepping behind her. "I'll burn the batch if you keep moving like that." She arched against him with a teasing laugh. "Then burn it all, Edmund. Some fires are worth the ash." In the quiet sanctuary of the churchyard, Sophia sat amid the gravestones, reading beneath the crucifix's shadow. Her rosewater scent mingled with incense, holiness, and sin woven in the same breath. Henry approached, his cassock heavy as guilt. "That tome," he whispered, glancing at the forbidden pages. "It's heresy, isn't it?" Sophia looked up, meeting his gaze with steady, dangerous calm. "Heresy," she said, "or truth. Come, read with me." Her knee brushed his under the pew, a silent dare. He hesitated, then leaned closer. Between them, the sacred and profane began to blur. In her cottage by the edge of the woods, Tessa tended her tonics, steam curling around her like spirits. Her hands moved with grace, crushing herbs and petals into glass vials. The air was heavy with rosemary, thyme, and something faintly metallic. Then, a thud at her door. She turned to find old Farmer Giles, staggering from the forest, eyes pale as milk, skin waxen and cold. "The mists," he rasped, collapsing to the floorboards. "They walk, Tessa. They walk." She knelt beside him, pressing her hand to his fevered brow, but recoiled at the unnatural heat beneath her palm. His veins pulsed dark and sluggish, crawling with something unseen. By noon, word spread through the market like wind through dry leaves. Giles was raving, they said, speaking of shadows that moved without men, of graves stirring under the Barrow Hills. The laughter that once filled Eldridge Hollow turned brittle. Eliza, Mira, Lila, Sophia, and Tessa exchanged uneasy glances, the echo of their joy fading into wary silence. Thomas hammered his iron with violent rhythm, sparks flying like anger. William sharpened his scythes, eyes scanning the tree line. Edmund bolted the bakery door, flour replaced by fear. In the chapel, Henry knelt alone, torn between prayer and temptation. Sophia's words haunting him still. Heresy or truth? When the sun sank behind the oaks, the world seemed to pause. A scream broke the twilight. Not animal, not quite human. It came from the woods, raw and jagged, echoing across rooftops and through hearts. Eldridge Hollow froze. The air turned to stone. And in that silence, beneath the thatch and the moonlight, something began to stir. Chapter 3. The first bite. Every curse begins with a whisper and ends with a scream. When the harvest moon bled across Eldridge Hollow that night, no one knew the scream that broke the peace would be the first note in a symphony of the damned. The scream shattered the evening like brittle glass. It came from the edge of the hollow, where the ancient barrow mounds hunched against the dying light, like forgotten sins buried in earth, too soft to hold them. The last of the sunset stained the fields in crimson, turning the thatched roofs into silhouettes of quiet dread. Eliza froze mid-laugh, her arm entwined with Lila's, the two strolling home from the market, baskets brimming with red apples that glowed like drops of blood. The echo of the scream rolled again, low, human, and hopeless. "Giles," Tessa whispered, already running, her skirts of sage-green wool and white linen flaring behind her like banners of mercy. The men followed, breath ragged, hearts pounding in dreadful rhythm. Thomas gripping his iron hammer, William his pitchfork, Edmund clutching a rolling pin like a holy relic, and Henry clutching nothing but his trembling faith. They found old Giles thrashing in the mud near the barrows, his body twisting in agony. His throat was torn, blood gurgling from wounds too savage for any beast, and above him, his wife. Widow Hargrove, once the gentle baker whose elderberry pies perfumed the market square, loomed now as a specter of hunger. Her eyes were milky white voids, her mouth a dripping maw of scarlet ruin. The sweet scent of pastry had turned to the stench of death. She snarled, a sound not human, not animal, but ancient. "Mother!" Edmund cried, his voice breaking as he stumbled forward. She turned on him, shrieking, her bloodied hands reaching, nails curled like claws. Thomas moved first. The blacksmith's hammer swung through the air with a sound like thunder, striking her temple. The blow sent her sprawling, lifeless, yet she rose again, bones cracking like dry branches. The sight drew a chorus of gasps, the living recoiling from what defied both nature and God. William and Henry dragged Giles away, his breath bubbling wet and faint. Tessa knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she pressed poultices to the wound. But before their eyes, the veins blackened, spidering across his skin like spilled ink. "It's the curse," Sophia murmured, clutching her ancient tome, her eyes alight with terror and knowledge. The barrows, the old ones warned of this. By nightfall, panic gripped Eldridge Hollow like frost. Whispers turned to cries, and doors slammed shut as though wood could keep out what rose from the earth. Inside Tessa's cottage, the women huddled together. Shadows danced across the walls, the fire flickering with restless unease. Eliza's bravado faltered, her trembling fingers tugged at her laces, seeking breath. "What if it's us next?" she whispered. Mira, pale and frightened, flinched at every distant sound until William slipped in through the back, pulling her into his arms. "You're safe," he whispered, pressing his lips to her temple. She turned her face to his, and in that kiss, born of terror, they sought life while death prowled outside. Lila clung to Edmund, the playful glint in her eyes replaced by desperate fire. "Hold me," she whispered, "as if tomorrow's ours." He did, his touch fierce, their closeness a rebellion against the dying world. In a shadowed corner, Sophia and Henry knelt over the flickering candlelight, her forbidden book open between them. "The relic," she whispered, "the silver chalice buried with the witch queen. It calls the dead." Henry's pulse thundered. His vows, his faith, all blurred in the warmth of her nearness. His hand found hers, sliding to her thigh beneath the table. The candle guttered, as if ashamed to witness them. Outside, the mist thickened. Then came the moans. Faint at first, then many, then near. Thomas stood by the window, hammer in hand, Eliza leaning against him, her head upon his shoulder. "I won't let it take you. he vowed, voice trembling with a courage he didn't quite believe. But through the moans came a rasping voice, Giles's final breath, thick with rot and regret. The priest hid it. Then silence, save for the shuffle of feet in the dark. And so, under the bleeding moon, Eldridge Hollow took its first bite of horror. Chapter 4. Veins of Shadow. When love and terror share the same breath, even desire begins to bleed. The night had teeth now, soft, unseen, and merciless, and beneath the trembling stars of Eldridge Hollow, every heartbeat became both a prayer and a curse. Night fell heavy over Eldridge Hollow, draping the village in velvet darkness thick with dread. The moon hung high and watchful, its pale light trembling upon thatched rooftops slick with dew. Through shutter cracks and splintered beams, the moans of the dead threaded into every home, a dirge that made even firelight quiver. Inside Tessa's cottage, fear and heat mingled in the same breath. The herb-scented air was dense, lavender, sweat, and candle smoke weaving together in a tapestry of survival. The 5 girls and 4 boys huddled close, bodies pressed in desperate intimacy, where innocent longing became the only warmth left against the cold promise of death. By the hearth, Eliza sat astride Thomas's lap, her crimson skirts gathered high for warmth. Her hair spilled over his shoulders like wildfire, her lips close enough to melt faith itself. "Promise me fire," she whispered, her voice trembling with need and defiance. "Even in this." She bit his ear, a plea disguised as passion. Thomas's rough hands roamed her back, pulling at laces until they came undone like vows breaking. Their breath rose in unison, hearts thundering as lust became rebellion against the scratching at the door. In the alcove's shadow, Mira and William found each other like moths seeking flame. Her green kirtle pooled around her, the candlelight painting her curves in trembling gold. He kissed her neck, reverent and slow, tasting salt and fear. "You're my light," he murmured, voice breaking. Her fingers tangled in his shirt, pulling him closer until her moans were swallowed in his shoulder, a prayer disguised as surrender. At the table, Lila drew Edmund in with playful boldness, her flower-dusted hands finding his hips. "Dance with me here," she teased, her voice thick with both laughter and longing. She moved against him in slow circles, the scent of yeast and smoke heavy between them. Her bodice slipped, revealing skin freckled like stars, and his self-control shattered. Their lips collided, fierce and hungry, love's final feast before the end of days. In the corner by the candle's weakest glow, Sophia faced Henry, her forbidden tome open between them. The page bore a sketch of the silver chalice, its lines inked in ancient runes. "It was Father Elias," she said, voice low and sharp. "He unearthed it, for power, not faith." Henry's resolve trembled. His vows felt distant, meaningless, as her eyes pierced through them. "Forgive me," he whispered. But Sophia silenced him with a kiss, heretical and holy all at once, their bodies entwining like scripture rewritten in sweat. Tessa moved quietly among them, tending wounds and secrets alike. She pressed balm to Lila's arm, where the widow's nails had grazed her. The scratch was shallow, yet something about it made her pulse quicken, a heat beneath the skin that wasn't fever. Her eyes flicked to Henry, and for a moment jealousy bloomed like poison, subtle and green. When dawn bled across the horizon, there was no birdsong, only silence, stretched and unnatural. The bell of Father Elias's church hung still, its tongue unmoving. Thomas led a small band to the chapel, his hammer at his side, Eliza's dagger hidden in her garter, the hilt kissing her thigh, a secret sharper than steel. Inside, the air stank of rot and holy oil. Pews overturned, scrolls torn, candles melted to nothing. On the wall, words scrawled in blood. "The blood calls kin." The chalice was gone. So was Father Elias. Fear tightened its grip around the survivors as moans rose once more from the mists. More voices, more lost souls, more death unburied. The young lovers fortified Tessa's cottage, each door barred, each window sealed. Yet their hearts, tangled in passion and panic, beat with one haunting thought. Why were they spared? Was the curse drawn to innocence or to sin? As the sun vanished once again, a child's cry drifted through the fog. High, trembling, heartbreakingly human. Then silence. A silence so deep it felt alive. And somewhere in the distance, under the sleeping oaks, the hollow began to weep. Chapter 5. The Chalice's Whisper. Whispers rode the storm, dark promises of youth, power, and sin. The cursed chalice had vanished, yet its voice still lingered in every heartbeat. every trembling kiss, every secret touch. As desire and dread entwined like lovers in the dark, the true nature of Father Elias's sin began to surface, and with it a revelation that would stain every soul in Eldridge Hollow. By midday, the village square lay desecrated, market stalls overturned like fallen altars. The undead prowled in ragged packs, their faces hollow masks of once familiar neighbors. Tom the tanner among them, his cheerful grin now a blood-slick snarl. Tessa's cottage stood as the last refuge, its flickering candles fighting the encroaching gloom. Inside, the survivors clung to each other, hearts pounding with fear and longing in equal measure. Sophia bent over an ancient tome, the pages rippling in the candle's restless breath. "The chalice was forged from the blood of the Witch Queen," she said softly, tracing its symbols. "It binds the dead to the living through sin, lust, envy, wrath." Her gaze flicked to Henry, her words heavy with something unspoken. His jaw tightened, memories of forbidden touches haunting his conscience. Eliza leaned against Thomas, the edge of her dagger catching the light as she sharpened it with deliberate calm. "If sin keeps us alive," she murmured, "then let's keep sinning." Her smirk faltered at a distant shriek, the air thickening with dread. Thomas kissed her temple, his grip tightening around her waist as if to anchor them both. In the far corner, Mira clung to William, her timid nature fraying under fear. "I saw Elias," she whispered, "by the barrows, chanting." William's eyes darkened. He reached for his coat, but she stopped him, her lips trembling against his. "Stay," she pleaded. Their embrace spoke of desperation more than passion, a fleeting comfort before the storm. Lila and Edmund huddled near the window, their laughter forced between bites of stale bread. "If death waits outside, let's taste life first," she teased, tracing his jaw with her fingertips. He caught her hand and kissed it, their closeness a fragile rebellion against despair. At the hearth, Tessa stirred a steaming potion, its scent sharp and earthy. "It will hold the fever at bay," she promised, though her eyes betrayed doubt. The small wound on Lila's arm had deepened to a bruise veined black. Henry noticed but said nothing, his priestly resolve wavering as Sophia brushed past him, the warmth of her body testing his faith. Then came the knock. 3 frantic raps against the soaked wood. Thomas lifted the bar and young Pip stumbled in, soaked, trembling, eyes wild. "The chalice!" he gasped. "Elias, he drank from it. Said it would make him eternal, but the dead followed." His voice cracked before he collapsed, veins darkening beneath his skin. Terror and temptation merged in the flicker of the firelight. Was Elias the master or the first victim? Was Tessa's potion a cure or the next curse? As thunder rolled across the hollow, the survivors huddled closer, unaware that the true infection might already be pulsing in their veins. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, hearts whispered sins the chalice could hear. Chapter 6, Fevered Confessions. The storm raged like a living thing, drowning Eldridge Hollow in rain and ruin. Within the trembling walls of Tessa's cottage, desire and dread tangled into one desperate heartbeat. Secrets burned hotter than the hearth, and every whispered confession carried the taste of sin. But as lightning unveiled Father Elias among the dead, chalice in hand and eyes gleaming with madness, the survivors would learn that the true infection was no longer outside. It was already inside them. Rain battered the roof in relentless fury, the world outside melting into shadow and sludge. Pip writhed upon Tessa's palate, his voice a cracked echo of guilt and revelation. "Elias, he found the chalice weeks ago, said our sins would feed it." His words poured out like poison, fevered and raw. Tessa steadied him, forcing her potion past his trembling lips, yet her gaze lingered, haunted by the priest's name, by dreams she dared not remember. Eliza paced restlessly, the soaked linen of her shift clinging to her form, drawing Thomas's desperate eyes. "If our sins give it power, then we're all damned," she said bitterly, but fear turned to defiance as she seized his hand, pulling him into the pantry. Their passion was fierce, unrestrained, a grasp at life amidst decay. Each embrace was a vow against the darkness clawing at the door. Near the fire, Mira sought warmth in William's arms. "No more waiting," she whispered, trembling yet brave. His hands found her waist, steady and tender. Their closeness was not indulgence, it was refuge. As thunder rolled, they held each other tighter, 2 souls fighting the inevitable tide. By the window, Lila turned her vigil into laughter, teasing Edmund as she rested against him. "If death is near, let him wait his turn," she murmured, brushing his cheek with soft affection. Their shared touch was light, fleeting, yet full of life, a final sweetness before despair. Sophia and Henry sat over the ancient book, its runes glowing faintly in the candlelight. "The chalice binds through sin," she said, voice low. "Then we are all bound," he answered. The tension between them snapped. His hand found hers, her breath caught, and silence consumed their argument. For a fleeting moment, faith surrendered to feeling, and their guilt turned to fragile solace. Tessa's relief faded when she caught her reflection, a faint shadow pulsing beneath her skin. Panic clawed at her chest, but she masked it with calm. "Rest now," she urged the group, her healer's voice steady though fear gnawed her heart. Henry's eyes met hers, suspicion flickering like the candle flame between them. Then lightning struck, and for a single heartbeat, the storm revealed him, Father Elias, his form drenched, eyes hollow, the chalice glinting like a heart of gold and blood. He stood among the risen, their faces slack and hungry, and pointed toward the cottage. Henry froze. "He wants me," he whispered. "He's calling me to the feast." Terror closed in with the storm. Pip's confessions hung heavy in the air, and the survivors knew the truth. Elias had unleashed the curse through their sins, their passions, their fears. And as the moans outside swelled into a dirge, they clung tighter, blind to the fact that the shadows had already begun to bloom within their veins. Inside, warmth. Outside, the dead. Between them, the whisper of the chalice, promising eternity through sin. The rain fell silent over Eldridge Hollow, but peace was a cruel illusion. The barrows slept uneasily, their whispers seeping into dreams. The villagers thought they had survived the night, yet the chalice's shards still pulsed beneath the soil, alive, waiting. Sophia's wound darkened with every breath, her faith tested by creeping shadow. Tessa's confession hung heavy in the air, guilt gnawing at her heart as she felt the curse moving through her veins. Eliza and Thomas clung to one another, unaware that love itself had become the chalice's next offering. William and Mira sought comfort in each other's arms, but their passion might awaken what the hammer could not destroy. The night's victory was only the opening act. Something stirs in the barrows, a voice older than sin calling its faithful home. The dawn will bring no mercy. The curse of Eldridge Hollow is far from over.